Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Virtual Veteran Entrepreneur Training Symposium webinar series. Today is part 2 of our 13-part webinar hosted by the National Veteran Small Business Coalition. I'm Earl Morgan, NVSBC Program Director, and to our new attendees, we appreciate you joining us today. So a thank you to our sponsors who made this webinar series possible, and welcome to our 2 newest sponsors, Tenya MOS and BAE Systems. BAE Systems has sponsored our training symposium for the last 10 years, and so we'd like to thank them for their continued support to the NVSBC. Okay, for this webinar, this will be approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes, and it's being recorded. During the webinar, if you have any questions, please submit them to scott.denniston@nvsbc.org. We will try to get to all of the questions on this webinar, and if by chance we miss your question or do not have time to answer it, we will get the answer to you and post it on our virtual VETS'20 webpage. Now let me introduce the Executive Director for the Veteran Small Business Coalition, Mr. Scott Denniston.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Earl. Again, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. We couldn't do this without them, and we're truly grateful for their support. Also want to thank Earl for all the technical logistics that he provides every week for virtual vets. You know, for those of you who joined us last week, we had a great call with Dr. Mike Hoot, the Administrator of the Office of Federal Procurement Policy, talking about what he sees as the future of federal contracting in this crazy world that we're living in. And we have another great person today, who is Ms. Amy Murray. Amy is the Director of the Office of Small Business Programs for the Office of Secretary of Defense. So as such, Amy doesn't buy anything, but she sets all of the policy for DoD acquisition. She's also the Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Industrial Policy. So she has a huge job, and we're so grateful that she was kind enough to take some time to join us today and talk about small business, particularly veteran-owned small business. Now, I've got to tell you, she was appointed to the job March 16th of this year. So we all know what happened in March. Shutdown, COVID, all the chaos that we've all been dealing with for the last 4 months. So Amy, what a great time to come to Washington. Amy's from Cincinnati and was elected twice to the Cincinnati City Council, where she served as chairwoman of the Economic Growth and Zoning Committee and vice chair of the Law and Public Safety Committee. She also served on Governor Kasich's task force on policy and community relations. She also has time in the private sector, working for 14 years at Procter & Gamble, working to develop their Asian markets. And at that time, she had the opportunity to work with Bob McDonald, who many of us know from his time in the previous administration as the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, and some of the exciting things that Bob tried to bring to the VA during his tenure there. And Amy also has with her today one of her staff members, Dr. Ruby Crenshaw Lawrence. I've had the pleasure of knowing Ruby for years, a great supporter of small business and service disabled vets, and kind of the glue that holds that office together as it goes through transition, what seems to be transition after transition. So again, we're thrilled to have Amy and Ruby with us today. And Amy, we wish you a long tenure in that office, because one thing that we know about DoD is consistency and leadership is such a key element to having a successful small business program. So again, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, and the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Scott and Earl, for having me. It's great to be here. So I told Scott earlier, I wish we could all be there in person, but I'm so glad that we have this chance to spend an hour together right now and share what we're doing in the Department of Defense. First, Scott and Earl, I just want to thank you all that you do for the veteran community and the small business community. It is so important, and it's just very important work. NBSBC is a fantastic nonprofit trade organization, and I want to thank all the veterans watching today for your service. Thank you very much. As Scott said, my name is Amy Murray, and as some people around the Pentagon call me, I'm a COVID baby. I started this position on March 16th. So I moved from Cincinnati to DC on March 13th. And ever since then, this is all that I've known in DOD and in small business and in DC. So I've been in DC since March 16th and director of small business programs. And we have an incredible staff here that really works with all of the community, the PTACs, contracting officers, to try and do the best we can for the small business community at large. And so we are here as your resource. We are here as a support to small businesses out there. And as you'll see on some of the slides that come up, we've really tried to have a very robust social media presence so that we can have communication. We can be your arm and let you know what is going on day in and day out within the small business community. So you'll see it on a slide later, but our Facebook and our webpage, it's business.defense.gov. And if you go to business.defense.gov or follow us on Facebook or Twitter at the same address, we try and keep really up-to-the-date information of what you could possibly need to be more successful in your business in doing business with Department of Defense. So please look there, and we want to be partners and share as much as we can. So I've been the small business director since March, and then about a month ago, I was made the acting assistant secretary of defense for industrial policy. So that's dealing with all of the policy that we're dealing with. And right now in time of COVID, here in the military, we are ready to go. We are trying to do everything we can to keep our nation safe and sound and our military ready. So it's an honor to be here today. One thing I learned in the DoD early on is lots and lots of acronyms. So if I use an acronym, I'll work really hard to explain it prior. So our office is called the Office of Small Business. And so we abbreviate that by OSBP, Office of Small Business. And our mission is to maximize opportunities for small businesses to contribute to national security by providing combat power for our troops and economic power for our nations. We work closely with the small business community and especially with our other services. So with the Army, Navy, Air Force, we work with the small business directors from those organizations in setting policy. And Scott, I saw that later on in the webinar series, you will have some of those small business directors also be on your webinar. So it'll be great to get information from each of them. So there's lots of resources out there ready to go. As Scott said, I have had experience. I was in the private sector with Procter & Gamble, mainly working in Asia. And then I was on Cincinnati City Council, so I've had that public sector experience. But the thing that's, at Cincinnati City Council, I was chair of economic growth. So the main thing throughout my entire career is I am just focused on business and small businesses and what we can do to really enhance our environment for growth, and especially within the small business community. So we are here as your advocates. So I'm going to kind of just walk through what we're doing at DoD right now, how hopefully we can help you. If you have questions or issues, how you can reach out to us. So we'll start with that. First, as you can imagine, the small business community is very important to the Department of Defense. And we'll get in a little later as far as the numbers and actually the raw numbers that small business provide to the entire Department of Defense workforce. But here are some of the reasons why small businesses are so important to us. Small businesses are the backbone of the American economy and are integral for job creation and ultimately the protection of national economic power. We've seen as we've gone through this COVID crisis that we need to make sure that we have secure supply chains, that we're able to get products we need when we need them. And I think a lot of people didn't realize how important that was until we realized boy, we might not be able to get some products we need as Americans, and we haven't really been faced with that before. And so, small businesses here in the US are just the backbone for that. Small business considerations are important and relevant to every DoD acquisition strategy because they affect cost, schedule, performance, and vendor capacity. Small businesses, we find, are often more innovative, agile, and willing to take greater risks than maybe some other sized companies. And small businesses have flexibility to adapt to changing requirements or the environment. And due to lower indirect costs and overhead costs, small companies can often offer lower prices for services. The characteristics of small businesses can lead to lower prices, faster delivery, and enhanced performance for DoD, and it's so good for our economy. So for those unfamiliar with OSBP, it is our responsibility to establish achievable, strategic, and challenging goals for our small business procurement departments, for the DoD buying commands, and monitor performance across all small business socioeconomic categories. So Congress says to us it's important that we have small business involved in our contracts with the federal government, and this is the percentage we would like of small business contracts. So in order to meet these goals, we seek out opportunities and strategic activities to increase small business dollars awarded by the department. Essentially, the performance numbers demonstrate if we are meeting our goals and fulfilling our mission. So to give you kind of context through all of this, so with the Department of Defense, the procurement spend, so it's not on employment or hiring, those types of things, but on procurement, in a fiscal year approximately, Department of Defense spends $312 billion. So out of that small business, so out of that 312, small business is about $74 billion. So we're at about 22% of all dollars that are spent for procurement within the Department of Defense. And then taking that down even further, you might be surprised to know, or maybe not, so veteran-owned small businesses are at $14 billion, and service-disabled veteran-owned small business are at $10 billion. So that's $10 billion out of our $312 billion that are service-disabled veteran organizations. So you really have a huge impact within our industrial base. So our goal for service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses is 3% of DoD spending every year, and we have consistently met that goal. As I mentioned, we were at 10 billion normally, and 74 billion for small businesses. So this is, great, and we want to keep improving those numbers, and glad to be on the webinar today so that we can look at ways that we can keep increasing those. It's important that we keep going strongly in this direction. So I know you probably all know this, but just want to re-emphasize it again, that for a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, it's important that you qualify and that you make sure that you continue to qualify if things change within your business. So to qualify as an SDVOSB, veteran, service-disabled veteran-owned small business, you need to be a small business, and that is through the SBA. So the SBA has their numbers, and they have a website you can go to, and you get qualified as a small business, depending on what sector or category that you're in. You must be at least 51% owned and controlled by one or more service-disabled veterans. And so you want to make sure on your website, on anything that you have, that if you're service-disabled veteran-owned, you make sure that you have this listed and who is running the organization, who owns it. You need to have one or more service-disabled veteran manage day-to-day operations and also make the long-term decisions. So have one or more service-disabled veteran manage day-to-day operations. So, and then the last one is eligible veterans must have a service-connected disability. So you really want to make sure that you're within all of those areas. If you're not, you're still considered a small business if you're approved that way by SBA, But to get this further designation, you need to meet those different criteria. So I want to talk a little bit about what our department is doing and what our group is doing to try and help all of our small businesses, and especially during COVID. So as I mentioned, I started right during COVID, and so pretty much we hit the ground running saying, what can we do to make sure that as these small businesses are wondering if they're going to be able to stay in business, how do they get to work? How do they produce what they need to do? We wanted to make sure that we were doing outreach and saying, hey, let us help with some of these discussions, give you some answers to some of the questions that you have. And so with our department's called Acquisitions and Sustainment. So that's what industrial policy is under, and Ms. Lord is the undersecretary for that. And she reports directly to Defense Secretary Mark Esper. So, you know, it's right there where they're very concerned about what's going on and what's happened with our businesses during COVID. And as Secretary Esper has said many times, you know, we have not seen an impact on our warfighters' readiness due to COVID-19. We have stayed ready to go. As we learn more about the virus, we are adapting our responses and efforts to mitigate any negative impacts to our forces. So now some exercises have been canceled or scaled back recently, but our war fighters still stand ready to deal with any threat. And we need to make sure that we provide the materials they need on an ongoing basis to be ready. What we did within industrial policy is we started having industry calls with some of the industry trade associations to talk about what was going on within their specific industry, to really hear from the field as far as what's going on, what issues are you having. And during those calls, we heard about different things that people were dealing with, and so we have responded to those. One of the things that we did is we launched a defense small business webinar series. And I think we did our first one maybe in April, and we thought, how can we get this information directly to the end users, to the small businesses, so that we can give you the information that you need in real time? And so we've brought experts from the Department of Defense, from different industries, different departments, to really talk about topics that we needed to discuss moving forward and being able to supply our military industrial force. So some of the topics that we had early on, we had one with the SBA. So we partnered with the Small Business Administration and had one on PPP and the CARES Act. And that was right away when the CARES Act was starting and people were wondering, how can I get some of the PPP funding? So we had one for that. And as I'm talking, you might be saying, Amy, wait a minute, how can I find out about these webinar series? I want to be involved. Once again, I mean, Scott, I'm sure will be able to share the information with you. And if you go to our website, business.defense.gov, we have an area there that you can click and say, sign me up for webinars, and we will directly send you information when we have different webinars. And I would encourage Scott and your organization also, if you have topics that you think are of concern or interest, let us know what you're hearing out there. And we certainly want to put things together to be able to help. And I know you have this great webinar series going also, and so hopefully I would really encourage you all to stay on it and listen to the different webinars through the weeks, as that will be very important. But with our webinars, so we had one on PPP, then we had on DPC, contracting policy guidance. So it was very important as far as the contracting issues that were going on. We had one on cybersecurity and Cmmc, and I'll talk about that a little later just to make sure that everyone is prepared, but that was a very hot topic. We had one on teleworking guidance. So as you're managing businesses, it could be small, it could be large, how are you working in this new environment of telework? What are you looking to in the future? Where is this headed? So we had a really interesting seminar on that. And then one on the facility clearance process. We're doing this in partnership with the Defense Acquisition University, and they partnered with us and put together the platform so that we're able to do these. Early on, we were doing them about every other week. Now we're about every 3 weeks or once a month, but we plan to continue these for the duration as topics come up so that we can provide that directly to you. So I'd really encourage you to go on so that you can see what topics are upcoming. And as I mentioned, go to our webpage or our Facebook and you can get up-to-date information. So next, I wanted to talk to you about FedMall. And I wish we were in a group because I could say, who's heard of FedMall? Scott, are you familiar with it?
Yes, I am, Amy.
Okay. So we have 1 out of 1 so far. So that's great. So FedMall, if you think about it, how someone explained it to me is it's kind of like, you think of it as a federal shopping mall or like an Amazon. And so this is put together mainly for states, municipalities, the federal government, where you can go and buy some smaller level purchase items. And so that's what it's been for. But we were hearing from the small business community from different surveys that we've done that people were having a hard time getting PPE, especially small businesses. So whether we're talking face masks, gowns, things that you need to run your business, people were having a hard time getting those. So we worked with FedMall and came up with a solution. So on their FedMall site, we were able to carve out an area for a small business sector. And in that area, you are able to go on and buy PPE if you need it. And so if you go to our webpage, we'll have information on that about how you apply and go through it. But so we have people that can either, you can apply to be a buyer, and you do have to show that you are a small business and that you have a contract with DOD, but it gives you access to those products. Or if you have products that you would like to sell on there within the small business corridor, you can go and sell those products also. So if you go to FedMall, the site, it will help you with what types of items are available, what do buyers need to do to register for FedMall, who do you contact if you need help. So all of that information is on our webpage on FedMall, and they have about 220 items for sale to meet PPE needs. As I said, gowns, face shields, thermometers, signage. So this is just one area where as a department, we worked together and said, what can we do to help small businesses in this area? Because sometimes, you know, it's easier for the larger businesses to be able to get these products, but we need to make sure that our small businesses are still able to get to work and do the work that they need to do that's so important for our nation. The next topic I wanted to talk on are PTACs. And a PTAC is a Procurement Technical Assistance Center. And sometimes we kind of refer to the PTACs as people also, but it's a Procurement Technical Assistance Center. And hopefully most of you are aware of these PTACs, but for those of you that are not, I want to highlight what a terrific resource that is in helping to understand business and government, your small business and government contracting. So PTACs provide contracting assistance, often at no cost, in nearly every state, plus DC and the territories of Puerto Rico and Guam. So all PTAC staffs are staffed with counselors experienced in government contracting and provide a wide range of services and classes and seminars, including counseling and easy access to bid opportunities, contract specifications, procurement histories, and other information necessary to successfully compete for government contracts. So you can find your local PTAC if you Google PTACs, but also the site is aptac/usa.org. And you will be able to find them right there. So I really suggest that you reach out to your PTAC. I'm not sure how much work they're doing right now virtually, but it's a great resource in your city or in your state. So definitely reach out to those folks. So the next acronym that we will discuss is CMMC. Scott, you guys all familiar with that?
Yes, that has been a very hot topic for the last 6 months, Amy.
And I think it will continue to be a hot topic. So we definitely want to talk about that. So CMMC stands for Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, also CMMC. And pretty much what this is saying is that folks that have a contract with the Department of Defense, we want to make sure that where you're doing business is secure. That's kind of the bottom line. And so there's different levels of certification that people need to get based on their contracts. And so the Council of Economic Advisors, an agency within the executive office of the president, estimates that malicious cyber activities cost the US economy between $57 billion and $109 billion. So if you think about this, within the US, malicious cyber activity cost our economy up to $109 billion. Both DoD and industry have concerns regarding cybersecurity of the defense industrial base, as we should and as you all should. So the CMMC program establishes security is the foundation to acquisition and combines the various cybersecurity standards into one unified standard to secure the DoD supply chain. So at the end of January, ANS rolled out CMMC, which is the DoD metric to measure a company's ability to secure its supply chain. So hopefully this isn't anything new that everyone's hearing about, but we'll just talk about it for a minute. So it's no secret that the US faces cyber threats every day. Every day, if you're reading the papers, you will see and you will understand this. So it's so critical that everything that you have is secure. Cybersecurity risks threaten the defense industrial base, national security, as well as our partners and allies. I know that many in the small business community find the requirements confusing, and we promise to do our best to help. Dr. Ruby Crenshaw Lawrence is on the call, and she'll be here to answer some of the questions you might have just in general. And Shannon Jackson, one of our associates, may be on the call shortly, and he is working very closely with CMMC. But if you go to Project Spectrum, and Scott, I don't know if you have the list of people on the call that you could send out the information to them, but projectspectrum.io also has information on preparing for CMMC.
Yeah, Amy, we do, and we'll make sure that everybody gets that. And actually, CMMC is one of the topics that we have coming up in a couple of weeks for virtual vets. And we actually, you know, I think when you and I chatted, I told you that we usually have a national conference. And when we did the one in 2019 in San Antonio, we actually had a all-day session, training session on CMMC that Lockheed Martin put on for us. That was for the people that were there, was outstanding and really gave them a real jump start for these requirements.
That is great, because you want to be ahead of the ball, and even though it's one of those government requirements that you have to do, it's good for your company, it's good for your security. So, you know, it's one of those things you just need to do, and it's so critical. So before I close, I wanted to offer some trusted tips on winning or working with DoD. So, you know, a lot of these are just basic, but let's just go over them. So you want to arm yourself with information and facts about DoD. Follow the money. So you might want to review the administration's budget request and appropriation bills signed into law. Understand your target customer spending priorities and understand how your target customer procures products and services. Find your niche. DoD employs more than 30,000 acquisition staff. Don't try to be everything to everyone. You should only market your products and services to potential customers that buy what you sell. Meet with small business professionals. Small business professionals are located at every agency that exercise contract authority, and you're going to have some of them that will be on your webinar series. They can help you identify prime contracting and subcontracting opportunities. They also help contracting officers decide whether procurement should be solicited as a small business set-aside. Don't provide a standard or canned presentation to potential customers. Focus on how your capabilities match your target customer's mission and their needs. Tailor the presentation to them. Be specific. When you meet with program managers and contracting officers, be prepared right then and there to discuss specifics, not generic capabilities. Small business professionals can help you prepare for these meetings. You can find links to DoD small business offices on business.defense.gov. Also, reach out to your PTACs. Talk to them, get to know them, know what's going on in your community. Demonstrate utility. Explain how your service or product has a positive impact on a project's cost, schedule, and performance. Demonstrate to your potential customer that you understand their priorities. Identify differentiations. What separates you from other great performers? What makes you unique and better than the competition? Articulate how your target customer will benefit from doing business with you. And finally, be patient. You know, we work to make it as quick of a process as we can, but often federal contracts can take 18 to 24 months. So you need to look at the long game and plan ahead. So, you know, in closing, I just want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come and speak to the National Veterans Small Business Coalition. You mean so much to us, and we want to help you be able to succeed, and appreciate all that you've done for your country and your service. And, you know, we are there to help you. So make sure, if you're on social media, to go to our Facebook page and our Twitter, which are Business Defense, or as I mentioned on our website, I think that they're listed. And Dr. Ruby Crenshaw Lawrence is on to answer questions. I believe Shannon Jackson might be on. So we'd love to open it up. And just thank you so much for having me. And back to you, Scott.
Amy, thank you. It was definitely our pleasure to have you on. As you've been talking, I've been getting questions from the folks that are on the phone, and I had a couple of my own. So we'll start with the ones that were on the phone, and particularly on CMMC.
Yes. Scott, can I ask a question? Can we see our Shannon and Ruby able to speak right now?
Earl, can you help us with that?
I'm checking to see if they're on right now. Give me a minute here.
Okay.
Thank you. I know that Ruby.
I'm on. I don't know if anybody can hear me. Can you hear me? This is Dr.
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh, yay. Perfect.
Good. How about Shannon? Is Shannon on?
So I think we have Dr. Ruby Lawrence, and if Shannon comes on, hopefully we'll pull him on too.
Great. Well, as I said in the beginning, Ruby's an old friend, so glad to have her. And of course, we'd love to have Shannon because he's Army as I was too. So, you know, we can't have too many of us. So one of the questions that came in had to do with CMMC, and we're trying, you know, I think I mentioned to you, we have an educational arm called the NVSBC Education Foundation, and one of the programs that we're trying to develop in there is on CMMC, and love to work with you and your team to do that and help get the word out, because as we did for virtual vets, whatever we do, we share with the National 8A Association as well as the National Hub Zone Association. So we have an opportunity to really expand the knowledge base of all small businesses, you know, as we go down the road together. So if there's any way that we can work with you on the CMMC issue as it relates to small business, would love that opportunity.
Yes, so Shannon is really leading the charge on that. So I would partner with him, and he can put you in touch with Katie Arrington from CIO that is managing that also. So I know that she's been doing a series of webinars and seminars on different topics. We might do another one coming up because, as you said, we do one and then people still have additional questions. So definitely we would love to partner, and Shannon would be your right person to do that.
Perfect. Okay, good. Thank you for that. Yeah, I was fascinated by the webinar that you're doing next week on the Fed Mall and the opportunity for small businesses to actually purchase PPE as if they were the government, because you're right, that's been a huge issue for all of us, because as we know, the supply chain is only so large and all of it comes from overseas. So no matter who you get it from, it's all the same manufacturers, just a question of who's the middleman. But one of the questions that came in had to do with, if we've got members that have a unique or special product that relates particularly to COVID, does DoD have a portal or a contact that's kind of coordinating the COVID response in DoD? Because as an example, we know that VA and Homeland Security both have set up portals that we can go to and share with people. Does DoD have anything similar to that?
Ruby, do you want to talk about the JADF?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. So the Joint Acquisition Task Force was set up by Undersecretary Lord to get at the spirit behind your question, sir. Just to make sure that small businesses, again, have the opportunity to play, if you will, in the arena to provide this very, very necessary equipment was the reason for the JADF. The Department of Defense is working alongside FEMA in order to, and HHS, in order to make sure that there is some cross collaboration and reaching across the aisles. Because we do know, as the defense arm of the federal government, there are also needs that we can tap into amongst our civilian counterpart agencies. So the JADF, again, is a culmination of the thought and the belief, again, of Undersecretary Lord to make sure that there is a lot of cross collaboration. We are in almost daily contact with the JADF team members, the primary principals that make up the JADF, to make sure that, again, we are speaking with one voice across both the defense industrial base as well as the civilian needs. I'm sorry?
What is the address? How would they contact the JADF so that they could see how to submit information if they have a product?
Yes, ma'am. There's a portal, and I will give you the website address for the portal in one hot second. Wanted to also just make sure that everyone knows that the portal, in all honesty, it's not something that is manned every day, in that you are requested to submit information in the portal, but right now, because of the influx, there is not a receipt of the information that you won't receive. Let me say it that way. You will not receive an immediate response to your submission until there is an absolute need for the product that you are looking to provide. So I say that to say that there's also a fact sheet that will kind of run down everything and let you know this is what needs to happen, this is what will happen upon receipt of the information. We want to make sure that we're utilizing, all of the resources that we have to get at this, again, this need that we have across the defense industrial base. I'm looking for the website now, so please
forgive
me.
Too that you have, so Ruby will get you that address then, and often those are in specific sectors that they're looking for products, so you'll see that on the portal. Within FedMall is mainly looking for PPE products, so if you have those to sell, you'd want to go to FedMall. And then if you go to the FEMA website also, they have a section there of like, how can I help? And so there are 3 different opportunities of where you could go if you had product to sell to help within the COVID environment. So Ruby, when you have that email, just jump on in.
Great.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am,
One of the other challenges that small businesses have in the DoD world has to do with security clearances and the difficulty of getting the clearances as well as the time required. Any thoughts on how that process can be compressed so that we're not waiting months and months when we've got a customer that wants us to start work, but we don't have the clearances?
Yes, it's interesting, Scott, because that is really a hot topic. And I believe it was our last webinar was on facility clearance. So if you go to our website, there should be, and Ramsey, are you on? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Do we have the slides from that webinar, or do we have the actual webinar itself up on our webpage?
Yes, we have the slides from the past webinar, which is very helpful, points to great resources, but we don't have the actual recorded session. But I highly recommend the slides.
So if you go, that gives a lot of detail of what they're working on to enable quicker or make sure you get the accurate facility clearance you need when you need it.
Okay, good. Thank you. One of the things I noticed on your slides was that the trends for awards to veteran and service disabled vets as a percentage of the total procurement over the last 5 years seem to be trending down. Number one, is that something that you're finding in all of the other small business programs? Is it unique to the veteran community? And if so, are there any initiatives to get the curve going back up in the right direction?
Sure. Ruby, do you have information on that? You've been here a little longer.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sir, if you broke up a little bit on my phone, would you mind just repeating your question? I apologize for that.
Not
You
a
broke up,
problem.
and I want to.
Yeah, it had to do with the slide in Amy's presentation that talked about veteran and service disabled vet awards, and the trend from a percentage of total procurement was going down over the last 5 years. So 2 questions. One, is that something you're finding with all small business programs? Is it unique to the veteran world? And if so, are there any initiatives that you can share with us to get those trends going in the upright direction?
So thank you for that, sir. So I know specifically one thing that Ms. Murray is looking to do across the board amongst all of the socioeconomic categories where I do serve as the associate director is to make sure that those things that we have been able to do very well as it relates to outreach. We have increased our hub zone numbers from a few years past. I know when I first came on board, we were further away from the target than where we are now. We are tons closer to actually meeting overall our hub zone goal, but that has been a result of outreach and making sure that we are cultivating and developing relationships with a lot of our outside entities, our associations that serve as a vehicle. The PTACs, we're utilizing the PTACs a bit more, and I think that that's the upward trend that what we will continue to do to make sure that we are providing a vested interest across all of those socioeconomic categories in which we want to make sure we're getting the word out about how to do business with the department. The Undersecretary of Defense, Secretary Lord, she often refers to industrial policy, the office as a whole, as the help desk for industry, the help desk for small businesses. And when she says that, what she means is that as a small business, we want to make sure that we are very responsive to the needs of the small businesses, that we are not only hearing them, but that we are working alongside them to ensure that we meet our goals. We are not just focused on our goals. We know that that is definitely something that is at the forefront of the department's mind. But in addition to making sure that we are cognizant of our goals, we want to make sure that we are speaking to the communities as a whole to kind of make sure that we're taking advantage of the opportunities that we did not take advantage of once before. So specifically, I know for the women-owned small business goals, one thing that I've incorporated is working collaboratively with one of the agencies, one of the civilian agencies, one of our civilian agencies that has introduced the office to an organization that is by leaps and bounds doing wonderful things, women impacting public policy. So in our participation of the WHIP events, we are able to make sure that we're speaking to a body of women-owned small businesses that are not familiar with doing business with the government and are not familiar with some of those key touch points that Ms. Murray made mention of knowing who you are, knowing your base, knowing your product, knowing who your audience is. So that speaks to the latter part of your question. Again, just making sure that we are cultivating and developing relationships outside of the department that will help get our message out. As it relates to the trend, what we've seen, again, across the board is not just SCVOSB. It has been HubZone, it has been 8A, it has also been the WSB socioeconomic community that have been impacted. I believe that that's twofold. The change in excuse me, the change that has been brought about, of course, by COVID, that did not help the community in any of the communities in and of themselves. Prior to COVID, I know some of the changes were just being able to make sure that our acquisition workforce, that they're utilizing, fair and market practices to make sure that they're casting the widest net possible to ensure that the communities are participating in all of the acquisition opportunities that are out there. So what we're doing to make sure that we get at that trend is to once again educate the acquisition workforce just a bit more, make sure that they understand some of the arms that they can and the touch points that they can use outside of the walls of the building, utilizing the P-taxes Ms. Murray has made mention of, utilizing the Small Business Development Center, utilizing some of these other areas in which we can make sure that we have a louder voice to incorporate these socioeconomic categories in doing business with the department. So I pray that answers your question as thoroughly as what it was given to me. But again, all in all, what we're doing is we're just trying to make sure that we're cultivating and developing the relationships outside of the business, outside of the building rather, to ensure that we're getting our message out.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would hope that when you're talking about the veteran small business community, that you would think of the NVSBC as one of your partners. One of the things that we've done is, because understanding the issues in DoD, particularly with high tech, we've started a program with Lockheed Martin with the SBIR program as an example. We also have a series of high tech webinars that we're doing with NASA JPL, because they have some of the same issues that DoD does in the high tech world. So I just encourage you to think of us as one of your go-to organizations when you're talking to WIP and the Hub Zone Council and some of the other ones around town.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we thank you for that. And if there are opportunities in which we can get before the community, and if there are opportunities in which you would like to share some information that you garnered from the community, please, we too would like to serve as a resource amongst those in which you're touching.
Yeah, thanks. We'll take you up on that. Another question, and Amy, this was before you came, but I'm sure you've heard about it. Several years ago, the NDAA required what was called the Section 809 panel, which was a group of DoD and outside experts to deal with this challenge of how do we bring high-tech equipment to the warfighter faster. And what was interesting about the final report that was done is it talked a lot about the importance of small business from the standpoint of innovation, technology, quickness for responsiveness, number of patents, all those things that we hear all the time. But the flip side of that was one of the recommendations of the panel that we were very upset about was the elimination of set-asides within DoD acquisitions. And it seems that at least for the past year, that's been a very quiet topic, at least on the Hill. Nobody seems to want to touch it. And I'm curious if you're hearing anything within the DoD space about the 809 panel, the recommendations that were made, particularly those that related to small businesses.
So
if I can jump
go
in.
ahead, Ruby.
Yes. Yes, sir. We are all double and triple hatted within the office. And in addition to the socioeconomic categories, I also serve as the touch points for legislative and congressional affairs. And as those who have had the pleasure of reading each and every volume of the 809 panel, you know that it is a breadth of information. It is speaking about so many things. And I know one of the takeaways that the 809 panel, that the department was able to kind of focus in of was duplicity, making sure that there was an elimination of duplicative efforts, which is why, of course, the split, if you will, between ANS and R&E. So I will say that as of right now, we have not heard anything as of yet, any grumblings regarding Section 809 panel as it relates to small business. I believe right now, not that it's taking a back seat, I believe it's probably taking the seat of the passenger right now to the driver called COVID-19. But I will assure you, sir, that in our future communications, I will keep you abreast of all that is going on as it relates to small businesses and any new information that is shared regarding 809 panel and any movement rather regarding the 809 panel and the small business community.
Yeah, thank you. That would be very helpful, because last year when we were in San Antonio for our conference 2019, we had one of the commissioners that was on the panel come and speak about it, and some of the recommendations in there were very, very interesting, and a lot of those would be supported by our group in particular. But then when it got to the actual implementation with the abolishment of set aside, that was some huge red flags, as you can imagine.
Right. And I know that was a conversation in which I too had been engaged in amongst the services and the agencies. As you opened up and shared with the attendees, our office is a policy office. So being the policy arm for the department, making sure that small businesses have, each and every opportunity to participate in DoD contracts is something that we are keeping at the forefront of our mind. It stays relevant. The services and the agencies have chimed in profusely. I mean, they've chimed in to say that this is something that we need to make sure that we look at with a fine-tooth comb because of the impact that it could have to the small business community. So, sir, yes, you're absolutely right. That is something that the department, our office, I'm tracking very, very closely.
Oh, good.
Scott, I am going to have to jump off at 2, but I think Ruby can stay on for a minute or more if there's a few other questions. But I just wanted to thank you all for giving us this opportunity. It's been great, and definitely we will want to partner more in the future.
Terrific. And again, I know you're busy with dual hatted, so we appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Absolutely. Ruby, are you okay to stay on for a few more questions?
Absolutely, ma'am. Absolutely.
Okay,
Great.
great.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you very much.
And Ruby, I actually only have one other question, and what it relates to is that this is kind of a unique time in the DoD world, and I say that because the directors of the small business programs for the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and Defense Logistics Center are all very new to their positions, and I'm curious as to the communications that your office, as the policy arm of DoD, has with the 4 services, because I can imagine that the learning curve for all of them is going to be pretty steep, and I would hope that there would be some guidance from the top. So if you could just comment on that, that would be appreciated.
Absolutely, yes, sir. So you are correct. There are a number of small business directors that are fairly new in their role. However, they do have years of tenure as it relates to working within the small business community at several of the services and the agencies, sub-services and agencies outside of the major buying commands in which they now lead. Our office, Ms. Murray, has a weekly, bi-weekly and or a monthly meeting, just depending upon, the schedules of all those attendees with the directors. It is a directors only meeting. And in that meeting, she, of course, shares top down the messaging that she has received from Secretary Esper as well as Undersecretary Lord's office regarding direction. she then provides direction to the subsequent directors at the buying component. And then, of course, there's a save round opportunity for them to say specifically what is going on in their service and or in their agency. What does it look like? And oh, by the way, Ms. Murray, you made mention of Section 809 panel. Let me share with you, ma'am, what type of impact it's going to have on our numbers. So if the Navy, I'm just going to throw them out for a second, if the Navy is unable to meet their goal, please know that this is of concern to us because we're no longer buying, we're no longer buying widgets. We're now looking at, buying and procuring chips, and we're looking at, procuring products outside of what we procured last year that helped us meet our goals just a bit more. So there is a lot of conversation behind the scenes that Ms. Murray has to make sure that she's educating the small business directors, and also to make sure that she's hearing from the small business directors on what some of the policy that our office is looking to institute, what it possibly could have, what possible outcomes it could have on their buying activity. In addition to that, I stood up the Policy Legislative Action Group in our office, and that group I team myself up with the services and agencies. The director from the services and agencies will allot an individual to serve as a member of the PLAG team, again, the Policy Legislative Action Group. And in my PLAG meetings, I am talking about policy, legislation, and congressional impacts of the department as a whole. And then, oh, by the way, what does that look like on a smaller scale for the services and the agencies? In addition to that, the Policy Legislative Action Group is also the arm in which I serve to make sure that the services and agency know what policy that we, the Office of Small Business Program, what policy we are looking to revamp, what policies we're looking to stand up. And oh, by the way, I would also like to receive from you the buying opportunity or the buying services and components, what policy you all are looking to stand up so that we can make sure that we're speaking in one voice with one sound to get at a number of the things that we have in place. So very, very long answer to your short question, which was communication has been and will continue to be the key for this office to make sure that we're working collaboratively alongside our components and our agencies.
Good. That's good to hear. We actually have locked down Navy, Army, and DLA for virtual vets to give them an opportunity to talk about their specific services. The only one we haven't heard from, I believe, is Air Force, but we'll continue to push on that because we agree with you. We think communication, in particular, all the new people on board, it's important that we start to develop these relationships.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
So I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'll be following up with an email to you this afternoon to get the websites to the portals for the COVID stuff that we asked about. And thank you for joining us. To all the participants, thank you for your time. I hope you found this to be informative and informational. If you have any follow-up questions, shoot them to me and we'll get them to Ruby and the rest of the team. Okay?
Perfect. And yes, sir, I do have the website for the JADF. It is very, very long. So if you want to shoot Ramsey an email, then I can go ahead and I can send that information right over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll do that. That's probably easiest. That way there's no chance of me messing it up. Okay?
Sounds good, sir. Thank you. We look forward to continuing working with you, of course, working with the organization. We look to be of service to the community. Again, we are the help desk to industry, so we welcome you to the front porch. If there's anything that we can do, if we can serve as an advocate, if we can serve as a beacon, if we can serve to continue to beat the drum in the vein in which you all are doing such a fantastic job, we are more than willing to do that. We want to get the word out. We're very passionate about small businesses. Very, very passionate. We want to make sure that small businesses know that they have an advocate in us and in our office. So whatever we can do, sir, we're more than willing to do.
Great. We appreciate that, Ruby. Thank you.
My pleasure. If I could do just one more thing, if I
Sure,
could
go
share
ahead.
my email address.
Sure.
Again, I am the associate director, and I handle all of the socioeconomic categories. So please feel free to reach out to me. I do respond to emails. I will also give you my my mobile, my work mobile. If there is a quick question that you need an answer for, please feel free to reach out to me that way as well. I want to make sure that we are as amenable to each and every person on the line who's participating in this webinar as we can be. So I want to make sure that you all have my contact information. So in that vein, my work mobile is area code 571-969-0918. Again, that's 571-969-0918. My email address is Ruby, R-U-B-Y, dot J as in Janet, dot Crenshaw, C-R-E-N-S-H-A-W, hyphen Lawrence, L-A-W, R-E-N-C-E, dot civ as in civilian, Charlie Igloo Victor, at mail, M-A-I-L, dot mil as in military, Michael Igloo Larry.
Thank you for that, Ruby.
Sure, no problem. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Have a great day. And
Thank
for
you as
everybody-
well.
Thank you. And for everybody on the call, again, thanks for joining us and hope this was informative. Send either Earl or myself any comments, thoughts you have, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Earl, what's the topic next week?
Gee, that's a good question. The
I want to
topic
say
is,
CVE verification, isn't it?
yes, it is.
Okay. Great. Which is always a very lively topic with Sarah Schwarty and Bill Thomas. So look forward to having everybody on the call that for next Tuesday. So everybody have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, everybody take care.